I love technology. No matter how many times you test it, it always ends up surprising you. Well, once again, thank you so much for being with us, and also thank you for staying strong through this little technical difficulties we just had. Just a little bit of why we're doing this webinar with VMware. VMware has been our and I've been partners since 2005. When we became one of the first formal VMware service providers in Australia. And in 2014, we also became one of the first VMware service providers globally to take the new VMware NSX platform to market under the name Launch Cloud Extender. Basically, this is a network-defined networking solution. And in 2015, we were awarded the VMware Asia Pacific Service Provider Partner of the Year, which we're very proud of, and which means it recognizes our commitment to deliver the best cloud solutions to the Australian market. Our goal is to be #1 managed hosting and cloud provider to business and government customers. And our commitment is to do that through the delivery of innovation and service excellence. Custom for us means we provide solutions that you can customize to your own needs, and compliance ensures that you always are in compliance with any regulations or requirements that your industry demands. We also ensure that we provide secure, scalable, and high availability solutions that encompass from co-location to managed hosting, private and public cloud, but for mission-critical applications. And then it all connects seamlessly to your own data centers. And this is how we view hybrid hosting. It's a system that goes from your own data center up to our different solutions. Now, we've invited Aaron Stepat from VMware. He's a Senior Product Marketing Manager for Software-Defined Networking, to give us some insights about what's happening in the world of hybrid and what are the steps you need to do and the challenges you need to address when moving into hybrid in this journey to the cloud.
Excellent, Anna, thank you very much for that. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your company on this webinar today. I'm indeed Aaron Stepat. I look after product marketing for actually the entire software-defined data center. So a modest portfolio of quite a few very capable and exciting products. And certainly we have a great adoption rate across Australia and New Zealand of these of our portfolio. So thank you for your continued support. I wanted to start off really by just having a look at where hybrid cloud plays into your strategy. And what we saw in the poll earlier was an overwhelming yes around those organizations out there, so you of you on the call, that have hybrid cloud at top of mind as part of your strategy in enabling your business going forward. But to bring some industry color to it, we actually engage IDC, and we use IDC obviously for quite a lot of quantitative research and also the qualitative side as well. And we partner with them to be able to identify which businesses actually had hybrid cloud at top of mind as part of their strategy. And we found that 70% of those respondents believe that hybrid cloud is absolutely important or critical to the success of their business. So businesses are understanding the value that hybrid cloud can bring, and achieving the best of both worlds, both for on-prem and off-prem, which is essentially what we're driving towards with hybrid cloud or hybrid hosting solutions. If we take that a step further, what we're looking at then is the 64% of those respondents have identified that their cloud strategy is actually a hybrid cloud strategy. So when they started off, it may have just been a private cloud, but as the technology and as the hosting providers have matured and the technology has obviously become very proven, customers are naturally gravitating towards the best of both worlds. So being able to get the benefits of public cloud, but with all the comfort of the private cloud dynamic, and obviously bring the two together. The last piece is really around those hybrid cloud adopters that think that hybrid cloud is absolutely integral to their ongoing revenue and their business growth. And that's a positive stat. It means that hybrid cloud has absolute relevance to the success of a business as we see it today. And just by the way, as we go through, we'll make reference to various white papers. All these white papers will be made available to you after the webinar as well. They're all publicly available, and it gives you some great additional insights beyond what we'll be able to take you through today. So moving a little bit further, it's interesting that despite all these organizations taking the strategy on board and betting it in, there are, funnily enough, still been some perceived barriers to entry. And the interesting part is a lot of those barriers aren't necessarily all technology focused. So out of all the respondents, 83% within and this is actually done from 451 Research, so we make reference to those guys. They did a study called the InfoPro back in 2013. But what they found out of those respondents, 83% are actually facing significant barriers to getting their clouds deployed. So whether this is getting their cloud architecture set up on-site and then being able to extend that into hybrid, or being able to just consume in general, they're facing some significant challenges. And I guess the first thing we all think is, being a technology discussion, we think that it's the technology maturity that's potentially holding us back, when in actual fact, the interesting thing is that 68% of these barriers tend to be non-IT related. So I guess what we're looking at there is, there's some, I guess, the political or organizational challenges. There are some of the process-oriented challenges. You know, traditional service management, I don't think has always been as flexible as what we would have liked, and certainly that is maturing to enable these sorts of approaches going forward as well. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of different elements that sort of feed into that one, which leaves the remaining 50% to being those internal IT roadblocks. A lot of these are probably tools related, and also, of course, some of the process side of things as well. There's obviously a lot of challenges or barriers, I guess, that straddle both sides of the coin, and we'll also touch on some of those as we go through. As a matter of fact, let's talk about them now. If we have a look at one of the CloudTrack surveys that was done, what we're seeing there is there are a number of perceived inhibitors to getting to hybrid environments as such. The first one you really have a look at is security, and don't panic, I don't think we're going to go through each and every one of these, unless of course you'd like me to. But as far as that goes, security concerns has always been first and foremost. There's always been this perception that, you know, if it's outside the four walls of my data center, I'm not so sure that and I can't see the underlying infrastructure and everything that's powering it. I have these reservations as to how safe my workloads are. We see, you know, in the same or a similar sort of vein, compliance. And compliance can be a couple of things. Compliance can be one of those things that is internally driven or focused, so it could be an internal IT or company standard, or of course it could be the regulatory compliance. So things like, you know, payment card industry compliance, the usual healthcare compliances, the financial services things, those kind of standards that are out there, they have a big bearing on the consideration when you're moving a workload out. Availability is a big one, and availability doesn't just talk to the, it's not just the initial, is my workload up, or if it goes down, how fast can it come up, what is my recovery point, recovery time objectives, those sorts of considerations. We also have a look in the context of what the social and the reputation impact is after as well. We know with a lot of workloads that are delivered from cloud, they tend to have a large audience, they tend to have a large constituent of customers that are consuming those services. Ideally, if it's successful, that's what we see. But the challenge is, of course, if something like that goes down, the ramifications from a social perspective are quite massive. So it could be negative press, there could be a whole bunch of different elements that could damage the reputation of a company from a service going down. We've seen this in practice quite a few times over the last couple of years especially. We have a look at the operational requirements and the performance requirements of business critical applications. This has always been a thing where my business critical apps, they're sitting in the four walls of my data center. I've got a bunch of clever guys behind the scenes who are throwing loads of compute and making sure the storage is all running and all the network's fine. And of course, when moving out to a cloud or a hosting environment, typically you lose sight of that. And that can also play into the perception, well, if I can't see it, I'm not sure whether I trust it. And that's a little bit of an ongoing perception there, but I guess we're seeing that a little bit less and less as more workloads gravitate to the cloud and are being successfully delivered, which the majority obviously are. Immaturity is an interesting one as well. how long has this thing been around for? I mean, you could argue that it's actually been around, hosting's been around for quite an extended period of time. And as we've evolved from pure hybrid hosting and moving along in that journey into full hybrid cloud, the hybrid cloud piece has been a lot of, I guess, noise in the market, especially over the last few years, and people are thinking, is this hype or is this now a reality? We absolutely believe it's a reality, and that's why we partner with people like Mactel to be able to deliver that reality out to the local presences in the market. Governance and SLAs is a big one, and governance you could automatically link to things like shadow IT. That whole mantra around, I've got a credit card and I'm not afraid to use it. I'm going to swipe for some resources and I'm happy and my business is happy and responsive. Unfortunately, the downside of it when there's IT isn't necessarily the happiest because they lose visibility of some pretty important things. So whether that's, again, the compliance side or even the cost side of things as well. Interesting, it's and a bit of an aside, shadow IT has always been perceived as, I guess, a bad thing. When in actual fact, I think it's actually been a real enabler and a real catalyst for IT to evolve to deliver things like that experience you get from public cloud. So being able to provide things like self-service and that governance layer internally, and to become that cloud broker or indeed that business partner or service provider to say, hey, this workload might be great in-house, but I'm also going to give you options for various workloads off-prem as well. Again, whether that's hosted or indeed in the clouds, and having that visibility, but providing the best of both worlds, means that the business comes back to IT to be able to deliver those key services, and that's a great boon to have when you come to adopting these cloud technologies. Network limitations is a good one, and I guess the simplest question that comes is saying, well, I'm great, I'm ready to go to cloud, but how the hell do I get there? And there are a few technologies out there, and there's one that's particularly poignant later in this presentation as one way of being able to lift and shift those workloads out. I guess one thing when you look at network limitations, the biggest one is bandwidth and time to move. And there are some mechanisms out there that you can use to be able to get workloads from point A being on-prem to point B, which is either a colo or a hosting provider or indeed a hybrid cloud. And the network really just defines, how long does it take to actually get there. That's at least in the first instance. When we start looking at the operational elements, we then start looking at the broader base things around what is my security infrastructure, do I look at things, can I achieve things like micro-segmentation with the network that I have today? Do I need to adopt new technologies to be able to bring those forward as well? So network limitations are certainly something that you need to look at before being able to move across, which is why it's a perceived inhibitor today. Without that consideration, getting workloads to the cloud is a very difficult thing, and to secure them there is even more difficult. There's a perception of reduced customization. So because I no longer own, again, the underlying infrastructure, I had this perception that, well, because I can't customize it, it might not be as good as what I've got. When in actual fact, we're not really focused on what the customization is. We're really focused on the consumption when it comes to cloud. And so the reduced customization is definitely what has been a perceived inhibitor to date. But as organizations are maturing and moving through, they're now realizing, actually, what, these guys know what they're doing. We're very confident with what they're up to. We don't need that customization. We just need the bulletproof service offering from them. There's a concern about being stranded, and this has always been a fun one with hybrid cloud. It's, we internally adopted as the Hotel California approach, where you can check out, but you can never leave. So, you've lifted and shifted your workload. Unfortunately, the disadvantage around having platforms that aren't common, so you might be running vSphere internally, but you might be running a different flavor of something externally. Typically, you either have to focus on building a new application in that environment, or you have to re-platform, and that can be a costly and time-consuming exercise. And once you re-platform, what happens when you want to bring it back? And that's where that whole perception of being stranded actually sits. So definitely a perceived inhibitor on that side. Integration is a big one. If you have a lot of third-party systems, and this is a multifaceted thing. Some of it's to do with network, some of it's to do with compatibility with underlying APIs. The integration with the in-house systems is important. A lot of business-critical systems still sit in-house, and we're seeing a lot of the development workloads sort of moving to off-prem. So if those two environments are unable to talk to each other, it tends to limit what your capabilities are externally. There's always the perception around cost, and it's not so much the cost of the consumption, but it's the cost of change. So being able to work out, what is it going to take for me to evolve my processes? Am I going to actually see the benefit, which is the next point, after I've done all this change and made all these modifications? Am I going to see the payback period, and how much complexity is actually in getting either to a cloud or indeed building the framework so I can consume it? Last but not least, and I think this is important because it talks around the most important element of it all, which is really the people. And so if you're having to spend lots of time, lots of effort, and obviously lots of dollars in upskilling for another platform when perhaps you didn't need to, that could arguably be a waste of the business. All that time in training could have actually been spent innovating on a platform that you've already come to know and love today. So it's interesting that, there are a lot of inhibitors, and they are across both people, across all three, people, process, and technology, or at least that's what the perception is. And I think as we go through, we'll see that I think the benefits easily address what some of those perceived inhibitors are. And then, of course, when we have a look at the benefits of the platform after, I think we largely cover off a lot of the other inhibitors as well, and they largely go away. So what are we looking at for the benefits expected? And again, when we look at this, there are some overarching themes that we see here. One of the themes that you'll see, and you see it a couple of times in there, is really around agility. And so what do we mean by that one? Are we looking at, we could look at it in the element of speed. How fast is it to provision a new service or capability versus what I could do on-prem or building from scratch? How much can I reduce my time to value and reduce my time to market to get a competitive edge? And that's really what agility, and when it comes to cloud, is all about, is being able to make decisions and being able to act on them rapidly versus having to have a lead time to be able to change and adjust the course of the ship, so to speak. We have a look at things like, control. Control is a big one as well. So the perception is that, with public cloud, there isn't a lot of control out there. It's a bit of a free-for-all without the right tools in place managing it. Private cloud, I have heaps of control. Wouldn't it be awesome if I could take all the controls and compliance levels that I've got internally and being able to stretch those out with all the advantages that I get from public cloud? And that's where the hybrid cloud really comes into its own. It makes a lot of sense. You're getting the benefits of all that visibility and control with the consistent tools internally, whilst being able to take advantage of that rapid scale, being able to scale up and scale out and get access to those other platforms externally as well. Cost is a big one. Again, it's not just cost to consume, but it's also cost of change. But there are benefits once you've gone through the assessment, and all those considerations to say, what do I need to change in my process? Do I need to upskill anyone, or is it a common platform? What is the is there other performance benefits that I can get from the external platform versus what I can get internally? It could be a simple, the performance thing is a really interesting one. It could be just a simple thing like, am I going to refresh my infrastructure, because it's a bit outdated, or do I really consider looking at the workloads running on that infrastructure and park them out in the cloud? Because a service provider, I guess, is going to have a much more dynamic and potentially rapid refresh cycle with more of the latest technologies than perhaps what we would internally. Consistency in the end user experience, and again, hybrid cloud is a great way of bridging those together. One of the big draw cards to the public cloud side of things is around self-service automation. So ask yourself the question, what if I could bring that ease of use, that ease of consumption to the environment that I have internally, but still be able to consume the resources? That approach is what brings a lot of the governance and a lot of the consistency across that user experience and that visibility across both environments. The cloud automation piece speaks volumes on that, especially from our portfolio as well. We talk around agility, but another interesting use case and benefit we see is around business continuity and disaster recovery. It's an interesting stat, actually. About 60% of workloads out there don't have a recovery plan. And, we've seen a lot of the on-prem kind of solutions. We have a look at what we do, from a perpetual perspective. You've got your on-prem data center, you might have a secondary data center or a co-location, and we use technologies like Site Recovery Manager to do the runbook automation piece. And that's typically been reserved for the premium workloads in your environment. But what if you want to protect everything else, and you don't really want to put your eggs in that sort of premium workload environment for a workload that might not be as important? And that's where business continuity and DR from the hybrid cloud and hybrid hosting really pays off. You can use technologies like replication to be able to go through and say, well, you know what, this workload, I'm going to spin up a replication appliance on my side, spin one out on another cloud provider, and then I can just literally migrate the workload from point A to point B and then when I need to bring it up, I can actually do that at the other side. You know, so there are ways of being able to do this either from a colo or a DR perspective to cover those other 60% of the workloads that might not be protected today. That's good from a compliance perspective as well. One thing I really like to focus on is, again, the IT skills piece. And hybrid cloud really does have a dependency on a common platform. You know, you've come to know the platform as, you know, vSphere for years now. And, you know, we trust that you've had an excellent experience and you know the platform backwards. So when you're considering moving to other cloud providers, it's probably a good idea to focus on which platform they're running on. The great news with Mactel is they're running that same platform. They're running vSphere, and they know, you know, they have all the capabilities and all the benefits of that platform, both servicing you as a customer, but also giving them the reliability they need to be able to host your workloads. And the good news from the IT skills piece is that you speak in the same language. So your IT skills on site don't go away because you're moving workloads to cloud. It's a partnership. And so the language that you're speaking when it comes to, you know, troubleshooting or articulating requirements, whatever that might be, is the same language that your service provider is speaking as well, and that's important. And of course, last but not least, it's avoiding the vendor lock-in and having that flexibility to be able to migrate a workload to an environment and indeed back from the environment. So again, you get away from that Hotel California approach and you have that common platform between the two. So reasons to move, and I put a little bit of an extra piece in there around reasons to move with an award-winning vCloud Air Network partner. And Mactel are indeed an award-winning one. You know, as Anna mentioned earlier, they did receive the award for being one of our vCloud Air Network Partners of the Year across APJ. That's a great thing to call out. The nice thing around that is that when you have a look at the benefits of the platform they're running on, benefit of being in the vCloud Air Network is you get access to all those great technologies that you've come to know and love as well. So the broadest operating system and application support, you know, vSphere today and vSphere Power Cloud, you know, purely by association, have access to over 5,000 supported applications, and we support over 90 plus operating systems. So when it comes to choice and developing both, either moving your legacy or existing enterprise workloads, or indeed spinning up new capability, you get those capabilities in you know, in and on top of that platform, both for the existing and also those new workloads, mobile, cloud or otherwise. You get to go live much faster. The infrastructure and the landing ground is there for you to consume. And the great thing is it's elastic, you know, so you can grow it, you can shrink it, you can spin up, you can spin down. You have that control across the environment. And again, that commonality in platform says so much. You can have absolute confidence that the security and the availability, the levels of compliance that you're used to, you know, using the tools to be able to stretch and test that compliance, and having the platform, it's from that platform that you know and trust. So you know how it's going to behave, you know its predictability, and that's a great peace of mind that you can achieve from that one. You get to keep your costs and your risks low. Again, that common platform says so much, but because you know how to design things in the environment and how to structure applications in there as well, and you know, again, that seamless mobility to go to and from they're great things as far as a risk-averse approach to being able to adopt cloud. And the cost is an interesting one. Typically, from a cost perspective, we see a big adoption of things like CapEx costs. So it's always been very project-driven. So we see a lot of that in the, I guess, the older way of doing things. A lot of the government organizations, some of the other verticals out there, you know, they get a bucket of money, and this is to deliver a project. Or alternatively, you get a fixed IT budget. With any luck, it's increasing, and we're starting to see, you know, some organizations are coming out of that perpetually, you know, perception of a decreasing IT budget. We're starting to see either flatlining or moving up. But one big shift we are seeing, and we're seeing it across even some of the most unlikely sort of candidates, is that flick from CapEx to OpEx, so that operational spend. And having visibility from an operational perspective, OpEx has always been, you know, something that's hard to quantify, especially when you look at the human element of it all. So from that cost perspective, you can say, well, I'm now consuming a service. I know what I'm consuming. I know what my bill is going to look like in the next month. I have the flexibility to be able to grow it or shrink it as I require. These things are a great way when you're looking at moving a budget from a CapEx to an OpEx. And it's an interesting, we had a look at, you know, we talked around one of the inhibitors before, being around the cost side. A lot of that is to do with budgets and how they're structured. And some organizations do actually have a time limit on the budgets that they use. And so it's not as easy as what we might think to convert that from a CapEx to an OpEx budget or to consume it over a period of time, especially being project-based. We talked already a bit around the security and the compliance part, but the idea is that you get to stay confident. You know, you're confident with what you've got today. There's a broad network of technology partners we have out there that are ensuring that they integrate with all the best platforms like vSphere and NSX and our other management capabilities as well. You know, the idea is that you shouldn't have to throw that out the window just because you want to consume hybrid cloud. Okay, having the ability to extend networks, having the ability to extend security envelopes, having all those plugins that you can put into the environment to see what's going on is a very powerful thing. And so you need to have access to those types of capabilities to maintain that confidence that what you're doing on-prem, you'll get as good, if not better, service by consuming a cloud for those services you're putting out there. It's a great thing from an agility perspective. Again, you're giving your business room to innovate. You know, that lead time to spinning out new capability on site goes away with the cloud. And you know, the advanced providers out there as well, like Mactel, they have great capability around being able to give you the right platform to spin up and create workloads, but also the flexibility in what size they are. You know, we see a lot of providers out there that have the typical t-shirt sizing. You know, you can have a small, you can have a medium, you can have a large. You know what? That's not really, doesn't really allow a lot of flexibility, and hence can sometimes restrain the innovation that you have. So when we have a look at that one, we say, well, what if I want a virtual machine that sits between a small and a medium, or a medium and a large? You know, with the vSphere powering that platform, you get that flexibility, and with the architecture that surrounds vSphere, that's what actually delivers it to you. I also want to touch on the support again. I mean, the support from people you trust. These are the people who you've chosen to put your critical and your important workloads with, and it's important that they understand the platform that it was designed on in the first place and then moving on to after. So these are great things to look at, to say that you can pick up the phone to Mactel and you're going to be speaking the same language as what you've always been speaking to when it comes to a technology provider or even VMware themselves. So you're in good hands. The last thing I want to talk about is really around extending your virtual network and being able to bridge that virtual network and be able to take your on-prem and being able to stretch that fabric into the hybrid hosting or hybrid cloud environments. This has so many benefits from you know, beating complexity to extending the tools that you've been used today to off-prem workloads. You get all these valuable benefits from being able to extend those network fabrics. And we, you know, essentially what we're doing is we're stretching layer 2, which means that all the services above are portable with it. And that's a really great capability to have. And on that, it gives me the pleasure to hand back to Anna, because just so happens that with one of the Mactel offerings, it's powered by one of our great enabling technologies called NSX. And Anna's going to touch on the offering from Mactel today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Aaron. So in light to that, we just put up a little poll that we would like you guys to answer, if possible, about what were your reasons to move to cloud, or what were your reasons to move your loads to the cloud. And going back to what Aaron was saying about extending layer 2 to increase flexibility in moving loads across and applications, we released Launch Cloud Extender end of last year, and it basically allows you to embrace the right balance between what you have on-premise and your other solutions with Macquarie Telecom, whether it is co-location, managed services, or hybrid cloud. And it is definitely powered by VMware NXS. And it allows you to move those applications and loads across with minimum disruption, reduces the deployment times, migration times, and because you don't actually need to change configurations of security and applications, or if you need, they're really minimal. So this is, we consider this to be quite a breakthrough in how things are done in the industry. So it does allow you to connect seamlessly and securely, and it also provides real-time failover across different WAN distances for mission-critical applications. And this is one of the things that we pride of providing solutions that are not just public cloud-like, but they are for applications that are critical for your business to function. And we make sure that they are on time and 100% functioning. So why should you be with Macquarie? To begin with, we've been doing this for about 15 years. We pride in service excellence. We are the only provider in Australia that has a Net Promoter Score above 50. All of our support engineers are Australian certified, and our qualified technical staff are very highly qualified and very passionate about what they do. Also, our data centers are highly certified, Tier 3 data centers, and you know where your data is. It will be in Australia because we are Australian owned and operated. So that is quite important in light of all the legal implications that have been recently announced. And we have a number of other customers that can attest for this, not only Australian customers from government and large corporations, but also overseas SaaS companies that have chosen Macquarie for their hosting needs. And with that, we would like to leave you with an exclusive offer for taking the time to hear us for this webinar. We'll offer you a 2 to 3 hour cloud work assessment workshop. And basically, this would be with one of our certified and highly qualified technicians who would sit with you and analyze which loads should go where and which applications should go where, and provide a summary paper containing a strategy for your journey to the cloud. This is a very customized approach, and we are offering this for free to webinar attendees, as well as the first 6 months of Launch Cloud Extender, if this is one thing that you decide to use to enable the connection between your own data center and our solutions. So we will be in touch shortly after the webinar to understand if you would like to take this offer. And with that, I would like to open for questions. I know we're very close to the time, but if you have any questions, we'll still be very happy to take them. And we also have the results of the poll, and it is massively, it's quite overwhelming to see that more than 50% the reason to move to the cloud is cost reduction. That confirms what we have been saying here, but also achieving this cost reduction without neglecting all of the other